Hey, what's up chess lovers, and welcome back to Chessway. In today's video, we've got a fascinating game between Roy Ambers and the legendary Mikhail Tal. This one was played in May 1990, and you'll see exactly why Tal was called the Magician. The game begins with e4 and e5. Then knight to f3 and knight to c6. We get the Ruy Lopez, bishop to b5. After a6, chasing the bishop, it goes back to a4. Now, knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4, but Roy just castles short, ignoring the threat. This position, yeah, I've analyzed this a few times. If the knight takes the pawn, white usually responds with d4 or simply rook e1. But here, Tal actually takes on e4. White plays d4, keeping things sharp. Then b5, pushing the bishop again, bishop drops to b3. Now, d5, solid move, giving flexibility to the light-squared bishop. If black wants to play aggressively, bishop b7 becomes a deadly sniper. If he prefers a positional setup, bishop e6 or g4 is fine. Now, Roy captures on e5, and of course recaptures with the knight, then pawn takes back. Here comes the moment I mentioned, bishop to b7. Most players would call this dull, but I think it's actually interesting. Imagine if that bishop could go to c5. That would unleash a full-blown attack. Roy plays bishop e3, covering the g1 a7 diagonal to protect his king. But Tal plays bishop c5 anyway. Computer says knight d2 is best, but personally, I'd just trade bishops. That piece is dangerous. Instead, Roy goes for queen g4, targeting the g7 pawn with a potential rook check. Honestly, I don't like this move. The bishop on b7 is already watching that file, and if you attack g7, you're helping black open lines toward your own king. So, naturally, Tal captures the bishop with his bishop. If white recaptures, the doubled e-pawns ruin his structure, but that's still his best move. Roy, however, goes all in. He takes the pawn on g7. Oh my god, this is getting wild. If the rook escapes, it can only go to f8, but after the pawn takes the bishop, there are three attackers all eyeing f7. That's serious pressure. So, what does Tal do? Bishop takes f2 check? Nah, too soft for Tal. He plays queen g5, attacking the queen and sacrificing the rook. White takes the rook with check, king to e7, attacking the queen back, and the only square left is h7. Now, boom, the brutal attack begins. Tal plays bishop takes f2 check. You can already sense it. This is heading straight toward a smothered mate pattern. Let's analyze this for newer players. If rook takes bishop, queen c1 check, rook blocks, queen e3 check, and it's over. Checkmate is inevitable. If the king moves to h1, then knight f2 check, rook takes, it's mate. So the king must return, knight h3 double check, king back to h1, and then queen sacrifice on g1. Rook takes the queen, and knight f2 smothered checkmate. Wow. I've said it many times, this kind of checkmate may look simple, but creating the setup is insanely hard. Back to the actual game. The king goes to h1, and as I said earlier, black is now thankful that the g file is open. The rook on g8 is perfectly placed to attack. White has two options left, queen h3 or pawn g3. Let's see what happens if pawn g3. Remember that bishop on b7? That sniper has been waiting for this. Knight takes g3 check. If king goes to g2, knight e4 check, king h3, and queen g2 checkmate. If pawn takes the knight, then pawn d4 check, king h2, queen takes pawn, mate again. That bishop on b7 looked quiet earlier, but it's been silently watching for the perfect strike. Back to the actual game. So Roy plays queen h3, breaking coordination between his queen and bishop that were defending f7. He simply pushes pawn to d4, and even though white sees the threat on g2, he can't do anything. Roy tries knight a3, no real purpose, just adding defense on the first rank. And now it's Tal's move. You might think he'll bring the knight to free the bishop, but that would be a blunder. Instead, he sacrifices his queen. Queen takes g2 check. Wait a minute, what? Oh my God, that's classic Mikhail Tal. The man just doesn't care about material. White has no choice but to take with the queen. Then comes knight sacrifice on g3 check. The queen is pinned, so pawn must take the knight. And finally, boom, rook to h8 checkmate. Super, super brilliant. Wow, what a tragic position for white. Usually when a king gets checkmated, it's because he's far from his pieces. But this time, he's surrounded by them and still helpless. It's like a duel. 2 bishops versus 2 rooks led by the queen. But in the end, it's black who delivers the final blow. What an absolutely beautiful finish. All right, guys, that's all for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned a few tactical patterns from this masterpiece. If I made any small mistakes, my apologies. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time, chess lovers.